Okay, so our book review for this last month was The Frozen River and The Serviceberry. For the life of me, I cannot find what I did with The Serviceberry. I have looked through all of my bookshelves. I have all of my bookshelves set up now. If you've watched my house tour, you'd know that. But I've looked through all of my shelves. I've looked through my drawers. I've looked through all of the bedside tables. I cannot find my book, The Serviceberry, anywhere. So I'm just gonna insert the clip that I used, that I did last month, because I had read it so quickly before I said what our books were for the month of March. And so I've kind of put a little bit of a review in there already on The Serviceberry. So we'll start with that. But before I get into that, I just want to warn you that if you have children watching or children near you, before we review The Frozen River, you might want to make sure that they are not in the room with you. This is not a book review for kids. Fair warning. But let's start with The Serviceberry to give you time to get children out of the room. Robin Wall Kimmerer is also the author of Braiding Sweetgrass, which is perhaps next on my list. At least it might be some summer reading. But let's start with this one, The Serviceberry. This is an excellent read for those of you who are into nature and care about changing the world in a way that makes the world better. She talks all about how the serviceberry is helpful from all sorts of wildlife, from birds to humans, and kind of models that helpfulness into how us humans can help the world and make it a gift economy. And so this is a very good read, and it's very easy. I read this in about 3.5 hours. I'm probably going to reread it so that I can really soak in everything that she's talking about. But I love this book. I give it a definite thumbs up, especially if you are, once again, interested in changing the world for the better and you really enjoy nature. I do want to say that first chapter was a little bit hard to get into just because she used so many botany terms. She is a botanist. I am not. I do know scientific names for some plants, but it was just a little much at the first part. But I loved the sentiment and everything, talking about the way the serviceberry was helpful to the world. So this is a perfect read if you're interested in that kind of stuff. For The Frozen River, oh my gosh, there's so much to say about this book. I want to start off by saying I loved this book. I now have a new favorite author. I have several favorite authors, but she is going to be one of them, Ariel Lahan. I said it was historical fiction before, which is, I think that is what it's categorized as. This author is known for biographical fiction, but this story here, she kind of spread out a little bit. She used a real woman. Her name was Martha Ballard. She was a real person in real life in the 1700s who was a midwife, and kind of elaborated on that story. At the beginning of this book, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to read it through because it starts off telling about Martha Ballard being a midwife, and I literally started crying because my mom was a midwife, and I was like, oh my gosh, if this is going to be similar to my mom, I cannot. But I kept reading it, and I ended up really loving it and getting into the story and the fact that it's based on a true woman, a real life person who lived, and it gives a historical insight into what women had to face back in the 1700s. Some of us think we women have it so bad now. And yeah, things could be better. And yeah, we still have to fight for things. Let's not get into that. But compared to back then, we've got it so much better than they did back then. I am thankful to be living in the time that I am now, than back in the 1700s, even the 1950s. So, but for the most part, the stories in here are based on truth, historical truth. So, which is really sad in some of it. Hopefully you've gotten the time to get your children out of the room. Fair warning to those of you who have been sexually assaulted, abused, or raped. This book may be a little triggering for that. I personally have been abused when I was little. Not to the extent of the people in this book, but nonetheless, I liked this story. And I don't want to give away anything to the outcome and the ending of this book. I did guess correctly on who committed murder. I did guess that one correctly. However, there were quite a few surprises along the way that I was not expecting and very pleasantly surprised about. And it may not be the ending we all wanted it, but it is a good ending nonetheless, to one that I am very was surprised. And I think my favorite sentence in this whole book: "It's a pity you hate women so much," I tell him, "because you are going to spend the rest of your life pissing like one." You'll understand if you read that and you get there. But that is perhaps my favorite sentence of the whole book right here. Some of you might be offended by that word, but hopefully it's not too offensive to people. I love this book. I love the style of this author. Very descriptive, and I can picture everything in my head quite clearly the way she describes it. And that is how I think she does all of her books. I might want to read this again, even though I know the ending. So I'm not sure I want to give out this book yet, because I really liked it. So despite the unpleasant things that happen. Let's just say if you can watch Outlander, you can probably read this book. So it's not at all, it's different, but it's kind of in the same era, and it's got some similar things to it. But if you can go through the triggering parts of Outlander, then you can probably go through this. This is definitely not near as bad as some of the things depicted in the show Outlander. So anyway, it may be triggering for some though. I highly suggest after you get done with the story that you go and read the author's notes. But don't read the author's notes until you read the story, because it'll probably maybe have some spoilers for you. I give this 5 stars. I give it 5 stars. So I love this author, this story so much that I'm gonna go look up Ariel Lawhon's other books. So yeah, I loved it. I give this a 5 stars. Once again, it could be triggering for some of you, so read at your own discretion. But I loved The Frozen River. So now we are going to get into this month's book picks. And I have 3 this time, because one of the ones I picked is so easy. It's such a simple read. This first one, to go along with the fact that it is now spring. This cute little spring fairy book. How adorable are Cicely Mary Barker's books. She has one for each season. Spring, summer, fall, and winter. I think it says autumn on her books. Aren't they so cute? And within the pages, there's a little fairy for like all the little flowers that come out in spring. And my favorite one in this, yes, I did read it already because I can't resist, but I think my favorite fairy in this book is the Windflower Fairy, the Song of the Windflower Fairy. I just thought that was so cute. And the Windflower Fairy is so pretty. And the other name for the windflower is actually a wood anemone. So it's basically an anemone. And I think my second favorite, perhaps my favorite looking illustration fairy, because there's a little fairy with each flower poem in here, is probably the Primrose Fairy, because the Primrose Fairy kind of looks like me and a little bit like I did as a kid. So here's the Primrose Fairy. How beautiful are the illustrations. If you've never seen these books before and you love a little whimsy in your life, I highly suggest getting these. This is the first time I've actually bought these. I've seen them before, but I decided to finally keep them in my little library now that I have a little library. But the Song of the Primrose Fairy is also beautiful. It's not my favorite poem, the Wind Fairies. The Song of the Windflower Fairy is my favorite. The Primrose Fairy is my favorite illustration, but The Song of the Primrose Fairy is also good too. I think it's in my top favorite 5. Such a perfect book for spring, such easy read. Good for kids too. As a matter of fact, this is probably made for kids. I'm not really sure, but adult kids like me. Anyway, so the next thing also has to do with spring. I have last fall, if you watched my Powell's Bookstore video, I tried to get the autumn book of this, and it was sold out at Powell's. Somebody grabbed the last copy right before I got to the aisle. So I decided that now I will start and I will pick up the spring copy and read this. I have not looked into this book. This is a novel by Ali Smith. I have not looked into exactly what it's about. I'm assuming it takes place in spring because of the title. We shall see, but there's not much I can tell you about this. It just looked interesting to me. I'm really into seasonal names of books and stuff right now, so that's why I picked this one up to go along with my spring fairy theme. And then finally, last but not least, is this book that my aunt had gifted to me. And it's all, you might think it's about just the Princess Royal. It's not. It's actually about a few of the other more famous princesses in the English line, royal line. And so they've got, I'm not sure who else is in this. The Tudor daughters, the sisters of Henry VIII, Scottish and French marriages, a debut of ladies, Princess Mary, Countess of Harewood, Part 3, Princess Anne. So it's not just about the current Princess Royal, which I absolutely adore. The current Princess Royal, she's no nonsense, get down to business type of person. I love that. She had 3 brothers, different positions. I'm the first, she's the second, but nonetheless, we still had 3 brothers and a mother who died of cancer. So I'm very much into royals. You don't know that about me. I'm very much into the royals. I could read stories about the royals and watch documentaries on them all day long. Queen Elizabeth II has fascinated me since I was a little girl, 5. I don't know why. Probably because she looks like she could be my grandma, because we kind of that face app where you can put your face in and enter switch your face into theirs. I've done that with Queen Elizabeth. Anyway, I love reading stories about the royals. I've read so many autobiographies. One of my favorites was one about the Queen. Her sense of humor is just so funny. I adore Queen Elizabeth II, and I miss her dreadfully, and I've never even met the woman. I never would have even had a chance to meet the woman. I'm not even from England or anywhere in the UK, so why would I have a chance to meet her? But she is... I think she was great, and I think the world misses her a lot. But anyway, here's a story about the royals with different princesses in here, and I hope this is interesting. I've read a little bit. It's starting out a little bit dry. I hope it picks up a little bit more as I get into it more. These are our books for this month, in the month of April. I hope you consider joining along and reading them with me. And if you don't, that's not a problem. I will review them the end of this, first week in March or the end of April. I'm not sure yet. Depends on how quickly I get through these books. And we will have more books for the month of May coming up. I've already got a list in my head of what I'm probably going to do. If you are someone who likes horror stories or very goth stories, I might not be the book person for you. However, I love rom-coms. Every now and then I will read a fantasy book or science fiction. I love documentaries, so I love a lot of autobiographies. I know, it's so boring, but I really love that stuff. And especially when it has to do with history. So any historical fiction type novel, I eat it up. I think those are quickly becoming my favorite. For the longest time, I was into autobiographies and like self-help books, and that's all I read, like in my 30s and 40s. So I didn't really have time to sit down and read a novel when I had kids. And even when the kids get older, they're teenagers and you drive them around everywhere. And so you're really not at home to read. Now I'm in a place in my life, I can start reading again. So I'm starting to get back into novels and rom-coms, rom-com drama novels, mysteries, but those are my style of books. So if you can relate to that, I also love little whimsical things. So, you know, fairies, nature, might even do a couple gardening books in here. Actually, maybe next month I might pick one of my favorite gardening books. So yeah, if you're into that kind of thing for a book club, this is the right place for you. I hope you all have a great week, because I will see you back next week with more screen decorating. Thanks for watching, and until next time, feed the pollinators for me.